Brother, I'm going run a wild Hulk Hogan. If all I get's a moment, I'll make sure it's an explosion. Cause lately I've been seeing stars, trying to kick out on this chokehold. But it's no holds barred, middle fingers like I'm Stone Cold.
What is up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Slapping Me to Wrestling podcast. This is episode, I think it's 124, in which we're doing an NXT review. It's a little bit late. Typically, I do these after watching NXT, and it's a fresh review of what we watched. I just didn't have that drive to do it last night. I finished watching and it was, this time change always messes with people, right? So we gained an hour of sleep, but my body did not. I wake up and it's, what it's supposed to be 7, but it's really 6 or whatever, right? And so I didn't gain an hour of nothing, because I just wake up when it feels natural. And it's anyway, it's been a long week, and I just, I wasn't feeling all that well, and so now you're getting this podcast on a Wednesday rather than a Tuesday night. Before we jump into NXT, there's some other news as well that we're going to cover at the end of this show. Before we go into that, let's go talk some sort of housekeeping. Not a lot. I'm working with my brother and my friend Cody and friend of the show DJ Wavy D, and we're working on finding and finalizing a date for. It's not going to be a debate, but sort of a conversation on tribalism in wrestling. And I'm sure we'll talk some AEW and WWE stuff. I'm sure some comments will be made about that, if not from anyone, from me. But so we're working on finalizing that date. Can't wait for that to happen. Have them all on here, as well as I'm pretty certain my brother Junkyard James will also be on for the end of the year award show, which we'll record sometime in December and get that out for you. And then that's about it. The only other thing I have is if you are watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button, place your comments, hit the like button. If you don't like this, if you don't like what you're getting here, let us know. Hit the dislike button, hit the down thumb twice, and let us know that. Let us know hit it twice. Make sure you hit it twice. If you're listening on podcast networks, leave us a review. Hit the follow or subscribe button on there, depending on the platform. They use different terminologies. Turn on notifications. That way, when episodes are posted, you get the alert for it. But the most important thing is share it with friends, family, coworkers, anyone that, random guy on the street that's wearing a wrestling shirt. Share the podcast. Tell them to look up Slapping Meat Wrestling Podcast. Join the Meat Slapping gang. That's the only way we can really grow this is by sharing it with other people. And I do appreciate everybody that listens. And with that, the last thing is Slapping Meat merch is out at slappingmeatwrestling.com. Again, that's slappingmeatwrestling.com. And other than that, let's jump right into the wrestling conversation. And so I want to start with Monday Night Raw real quick, because when I did the episode Monday, I recorded it at around 7 p.m., about an hour before Raw started. it takes about, an hour to record, and then maybe 30, 45 minutes to download and upload the video to the various platforms. And so by about 9 o'clock, I was done, and I was like, you know what? I ain't got nothing else on a Monday night to do. I'm gonna go check out Raw, because from what I've was seeing on social media and other places, it looked like it was a pretty decent episode at that for that first hour. Let me tell you something. Turning it on at 9 o'clock and only having to spend 2 hours watching Raw, I liked it. I do know why they keep it 3 hours, but I don't understand why the fans have been asking to go down to 2 hours for a while. And when Raw gets this new TV deal, I hope this is part of the deal, that it goes to 2 hours. And whenever Raw gets that deal, apparently they're moving from USA. We don't know. Last I read on Raw was that they were going to be slow and methodical with it. They do technically have 10 months before they have to make a decision. And so, I mean, you would assume within the next 6 months they'll have a network for it. That way they could start to promote it. But I hope that's part of the deal, is to make it 2 hours. Because it wasn't bad. But I do want to talk about sort of what I'm feeling with Raw. And the big thing coming out of Raw was the announcement of War Games. And I'm not going to talk about that here. That will be basically most of what I have planned for next Monday's show that gets released, is talking about War Games, my feeling about it, and whether I like or dislike the decision. If you know anything about me, and if you've already seen any of my opinions on it, you know that you know where I stand on it. But we're going to discuss that next week on next Monday's show. What I want to discuss was, I was enjoying what I was watching until the main event. Right? Until the main event. I may be the only one on this island, but I'm so tired of the main event scene of Raw. The women's division, just fine. The mid-card, pretty good. The tag teams being built. But the main event picture, and we'll talk about this more on Monday. Not the biggest fan of the main event picture right now of Monday Night Raw. And I'm going to lay down a proposition to how... Actually, you know what? Let's just go ahead and do it now. Let's not wait till Monday. I'm going to forget, probably. But let's just go ahead and talk about War Games. I'm not a big fan of this, man. I'm just not. I'm not a big fan of them making November War Games every single year. And you can come back at me and say, well, it's commercialism. It's no different than the Royal Rumble. I'll come back and combat with it and say, does anybody actually care about the Royal Rumble pay-per-view? Or do they care about the Royal Rumble match? And so I'm not going to be in the corner of getting rid of the Royal Rumble match. I think we need that. But I don't think we need an entire pay-per-view called Royal Rumble. I think the Royal Rumble match can take place whenever, wherever. It doesn't have to have its own show. It's part of the thing with Extreme Rules, right? Extreme Rules, for the first 3 years they did it, was pretty fun. But Extreme Rules matches happen anywhere, so it loses. If you're going to have it be its own pay-per-view, it loses its sort of edge with Extreme Rules, right? If you do it everywhere else. Extreme Rules is a stipulation. It's a match type. It shouldn't be its own pay-per-view. And I feel the same with War Games. And this main event picture, I know it's been building for 4 or 5 months. But over the last 4 or 5 months, can anyone tell me one place in particular that got to the point that it required a War Games match? Can anyone tell me where this feud between Judgment Day and the ragtag pair of groups that some people will call the Super Friends or whatever you want to call them, right? Where has this feud got to a point to where it required being inside of War Games? War Games is supposed to be like the last ditch effort to contain these people who got super extreme, and we haven't done that in 4 or 5 months. We haven't done that. We haven't built this to where it required the use of War Games. And so when people come at me, whether indirectly or directly, and say, well, it's commercialism, you lose me there. Because that you're thinking outside of the story. You're thinking of the business. And I know we have to think about the business of wrestling. That's part of it. But the best booking, the best bookers, the best promoters can turn storyline into a reason to where we don't have to think about the book, the business side of the business. It's not my concern about the commercial side of the business. It should not be me as a fan's concern to worry about the commercialized money aspect of the business. That's not my concern. My concern is when we do War Games, are the people in War Games, is this feud worthy of a War Games match? Is it worthy of that style of match? And I don't personally believe that the story we've got with Judgment Day versus everyone else, this ragtag pair of people, I personally don't believe that this works or requires a War Games match. And so, I mean, I get it. I get it. It sells tickets, but can we be honest? WWE didn't need to make those War Games to sell tickets. A traditional Survivor Series would have worked here. In fact, I think it would have worked better. Let me explain, and this is what I'm going to draw out. But before we do that, I want to pull out the last couple of War Games matches that we've seen with WWE. I want to pull them out though, since WWE brought it back, right? I want to pull out and show I want to try to get the history of the War Games. Let's see here if I can pull this up. I should have had this pulled up before. Okay. So in NXT we had was it 4 NXT War Games? Was it no 1 4? Yeah, 4 different events. No, 1 2 5 different events. 5 different events. And so you had Undisputed Era defeating Sanity and Authors of Pain. I don't exactly remember. This was still Black and Gold when that was happening. I don't remember that that feud all that well. And then you had Pete Dunne, Ricochet, and what's now Viking Raiders defeating the Undisputed Era. You had Team Ripley versus Team Baszler, Team Ciampa versus Undisputed Era, Team Candice versus Team Shotzi. So for people who are sitting here saying, oh, This can't be, just a random ragtag group of people. Historically, that's what it's been. It's just a group of randomly ragtag group of people. Just 4 or 5 people fighting against each other. The last one was Team 2.0 versus Team Black and Gold back in 2021. And it's always been that way. It's always been just a group of people together who, right? And so, and since it's been on the main event, right? If you remember, you had the Bloodline with Sammy versus the Brutes and Owens last year, right? And that was a deep feud. Bianca, Alexa, Asuka, Mia Yim, and Becky Lynch versus Damage Control. Nikki Cross and Rhea Ripley was last year. So really what I wanted to see was, have they done 5 before? Because traditionally these are 4 people matches. Because the argument being used here is that Drew McIntyre is going to join the Judgment Day, and that's where the 5th member of the Super Friends is going to be either Orton or CM Punk's re-debut to the brand. And we don't have to do, I get it. It's a commercial product. And I really didn't mean to spend this much time talking about it, but we are. We're going to go ahead and do this. I don't hate the gimmick. I don't hate the match itself. It's going to be a banger of a match. I just don't think it's necessary for this feud. And as to sort of it's going to be the special 5th member is going to be Punk or Orton or whoever, right? Where does that make sense? Because I can give you how a traditional style Survivor Series where it's Raw versus SmackDown and it's just champion versus champion and we really don't need story. I can tell you how that could be better. Look at the matches we would get if we booked that way. So you would only need 5 matches and that are Raw versus SmackDown. You could put on some filler matches as well, but I think you would really only need to do 5 matches. You would have the 2 women's champions, the 2 world champions, the tag team champions, the mid-card champions, and then the 5v5 traditional style Survivor Series match. Now listen, let me book this out for you. And this because the question that could be asked by some people who, well, how else would you do this? There's only 3 weeks. I can give you the entire pay-per-view in 2 weeks. I can build it for you in 2 weeks. This Friday, you have Nick Aldis start the show by walking into the arena on the phone with Triple H saying, Trips, it's not right. I ain't got a tag division here. I don't have titles. There's nothing for them to fight for. Can you please make us a title or split up the one? And Triple H giving them a tag team title to defend. Triple H saying something along the lines of, Nick, I'm already ahead of you, man. Look in your office. And we see him enter the office and at some point during the night and walk out with the new tag belts in the little carrying case. That way we can, right? And you could do a whole new design of them and or whatever, but give them a tag division and then say, we're crowning it. And then he comes out midway through the show and say, our main event tonight, we're going to do a fatal 4-way to crown our new tag champions for SmackDown. And there we go. We have a full pay-per-view set up. So now it's just going to be, SmackDown tag champions, whether it's Street Profits. I would personally put it on Waller and Theory. And so Waller and Theory versus whether it's Judgment Day or whether it's, Cody and Jay winning them back the next Monday, which is what I would do. That way you can have the sort of dynamic of heel versus face. But Cody and Jay versus Waller and Theory, that would be a big match right there. That's a big match for you. And then you would have Io versus Rhea Ripley. That's a big match. That would be a pretty big banger of a match right there. Logan Paul versus Gunther. That's a banger waiting to happen. You have the traditional style match between Team Raw versus Team SmackDown. And all you need to do with that is traditionally it's just been either you qualify for it or the GM, picks a team of 5 people. And so you could have someone like LA Knight, AJ Styles, Santos, Rey Mysterio. Trying to think of the men on SmackDown right now. Let me actually pull up the WWE roster. We can book this 5v5 because it's traditionally always either been upper main event or excuse me, upper mid card, lower main event stars. It's never been the main event picture, to my knowledge. Right? It's always been, unless there was a storyline around it, like the Authority in I think 2014, where there was a lot of the main players in there, but it was the Authority wins and we take over complete control. If we lose, we have to go. And Sting showed up that one's my favorite Survivor Series of all time. But let's take a look at the SmackDown roster, right? And so you can look at SmackDown's roster right now, and you could put someone like Bobby Lashley, AJ Styles, Bobby Lashley, AJ Styles, LA Knight, Santos Escobar, and let's see, who else could we put here? Let's scroll down this. It could be Karrion Kross, could be Sheamus, could be Ridge, could be So let's go ahead and pick one. Let's do Santos, Bobby Lashley, AJ Styles, Sheamus, and then sort of like the secret is not really secret, but you put Dragon Lee in it. So AJ Styles, Bobby Lashley, Dragon Lee, LA Knight, and Santos Escobar. Pretty decent roster there. Versus who on Raw? Versus I would put like Chad Gable, Bronson Reed, Chad Gable, Bronson Reed, Johnny Gargano, Ricochet, and Shinsuke Nakamura. There you go. We got the 5v5 started. And you could, right? And it doesn't have to be built on storyline. It's just, who does your people choose, right? And I easily just did it. And so you could have, a 2-week build of qualifying matches to build a 5v5, or you could just have the GMs on each individual show announce the roster over a 2-week period of time of, hey, you guys are representing the brand, go out and win. But then that settles to the main event of the night, which would be Seth Rollins versus a supposed Roman Reigns. But this is special because we already know Roman's probably not going to be there, right? We're too smart of fans, right? And hardcores and casuals alike, they love the dirt sheets. As much as casuals complain about the dirt sheets in the IWC, they love to take plays. They love to play into it. They love to read the rumors. They love to read all that shit. And so all the casual fans and hardcore fans as well are sitting there saying, well, Roman's not going to be there, so how are we going to do Seth versus Roman? Well, that's the point. Seth Rollins goes in. Roman Reigns, through Paul Heyman says, hey, he's not going to be there. He's not relevant enough. Because the storyline for 3 years, has been Roman is scared of Seth Rollins. That he never answers the challenge. Because if we remember this, in title matches, in 1v1 title matches, the only person who technically has a win against Roman Reigns in a title match in the last 3 years is Seth Rollins. I believe it was Royal Rumble 2 years ago. Seth won by DQ. Technically, Seth is the only person in the last 3 years that has a victory over Roman Reigns in a 1v1 match for the title. It was by DQ, which meant Roman kept the title. So Roman's, right, we could play into the story where Roman's, one, still frustrated over Crown Jewel and how close he almost lost it. But two, he's sort of afraid of Seth Rollins. And so he's not coming back. He's not going to be there. He doesn't consider it worth his time to fight him. It's not, right? And you can play into the island of relevancy, right? And so then Triple H comes to Nick Aldis and says, Nick, you have to find someone to represent your brand. Who's going to represent your brand to be my opponent? And Nick says, I'll find someone. And for 2-3 weeks, Nick Aldis is on the phone, stressed out of his mind, trying to find someone. And Triple H comes the Friday before Survivor Series. Triple H comes on and says, Nick, have you found somebody? He says, I'm working on it. I'll have someone. We're getting the job done. So Seth Rollins goes into Survivor Series without an opponent, without knowing who his opponent is. So he makes his entrance, and he comes out to the ring, and he grabs the mic, and he's like, go figure. Nick Aldis couldn't find anybody. And then the lights go out. And Cult of Personality plays. And whether or not you believe CM Punk's going to show up or not, and we'll talk about this issue at the end of the show again, but whether or not you believe CM Punk's going to show up or not, this is a bigger spot for him than the proposed, he's just going to be the 5th member of the Super Friends, or him just randomly showing up to face Shinsuke Nakamura. This is a better spot for him. I booked a better Survivor Series, and it took me 30 minutes to come up with that. It took me 30 minutes to come up with a 3-week plan on how to book a better Survivor Series than the one we're probably going to get. Because the entire main event scene of Raw is in a fucking War Games match. And Roman's not going to be there to represent SmackDown, and there's no one else there because they haven't built a fucking mid-card. The problem with SmackDown isn't Roman Reigns not being there. It's the fact that booking hasn't booked a mid-card. They haven't booked anybody. So we could sit here and complain all day about SmackDown's bad because Roman's not there. Roman's overdue to stay, whatever, right? What's funny to me is that we finally found an issue that the casuals and the hardcores finally fucking agree on. They want Roman out of here. And they both don't understand the gimmick. They both don't understand the storyline taking place and what's actually happening with Roman Reigns. Both parties don't understand it. Right? And so do we need a War Games match? No. Is it going to be a banger match? Absolutely. I'm going to come on here Saturday, what is it? The 25th? Saturday the 25th. After Survivor Series, I'm going to get on here. I'm going to do a Survivor Series review show, and I'm more than likely going to guarantee that I'm going to say that was probably the best match. And you're going to, and the response from the listeners could be, well, you said we didn't need War Games. Why are you praising it? No, listen, I'm going to go ahead and get ahead of this. we don't need War Games, but it's still going to be a banger of a match. Both of them could be equal. Both of them could be true at the same time. We don't need the match, but since we're getting it, it's going to be pretty good. But what else are we going to get on Survivor Series? We got Rhea versus Zoe Stark for the championship. Personally, to me, I feel that Survivor Series should be which brand is superior as we end the year. Because this is the last pay-per-view for Raw SmackDown for the year. And now that we have GMs, you could play into it. There could be something at stake. Hey, we're going to do a draft at the beginning of the new year. Whoever has brand superiority, there's 5 matches, right? So whoever wins the majority of those gets the first overall pick and picks whoever they want. This could be big. This could be how you can transition and change the roster around and that's fun. Right? And that should happen every year, right? Survivor Series should be like the culmination of every year's rivalry between the two brands. Between those two brands. And if we want to make it fun, you can add NXT into it as well. It could be the culmination of the brands and the storylines leading into the new year and sort of closing out a year's work, right? Survivor Series should be sort of like imagine we start booking WWE this way. The beginning of each new year, you have a draft. And it's sort of like a combine or scouting where the GM of the individual show throughout the year is scouting talent to build his 5v5 roster. And he's making decisions on who gets title matches, determining the future of his brand entering Survivor Series. I know WrestleMania is the big show, but you can make Survivor Series immediately, if I can learn how to talk, immediately feel more important if you give the stipulation of we're gonna have a year-long build. And we're gonna make trades, and we're gonna do this, that, and the third, and we could sign people from NXT. Right? We could sign free agents that aren't in the company, and you could make big value into the Survivor Series event if you gave it the stipulation of it's gonna be Raw versus SmackDown. The best, whoever has the most wins in the matches at the end of the night gets the first draft pick to start the next draft, to start the new year, which is, that's an important thing if we want to create this sort of rivalry feel between the brands. And in 15 minutes, right, and in 30 minutes off camera, I booked for you a better Survivor Series event. Gunther versus Logan Paul. That's a big level. That's a big tier match right there. That's a big level match right there. Rhea versus Io. And none of these have titles, so none of these need stories because you're culminating stories. You're ending storylines. You're sort of wrapping up the year with the ultimate big storyline of who's going to get, if you want to stay where you're at, you have to win, right? If you're Gunther, you're representing Raw, and you want to stay on Raw, right? Then you have to win your match to get right, and you have to push your team, and right. And so, I think that makes Survivor Series better than just having random War Games for the fuck of having a War Games. Let me know what y'all think. Let's get into the actual purpose of this show now that we're 35 minutes into it. Let's talk about some NXT, and then we'll end with some 2 big news stories that broke over the last few days. So let's talk about NXT first. We start with the Heritage Cup match between Tozawa and Noam Dar, which, even though Tozawa, highly underrated in how people view him. I know a lot of people view him as, the comedy gimmick, and that's where he's at. And he's fantastic at it. he needs some praise for this. Tozawa's having a run of his career with what he's doing with this run right here, with just being the comic relief in the show. And then he's joining here with the Alpha Academy, which are fantastic. Otis is great. Maxine is great. Chad Gable's great. You can get great matches, but also have fun segments. And so that's really fun. And this was just a fun match. And what's his name? Noam Dar retained, which is what was expected. And it eventually leads to, was it Mensa versus? No. It was that leads to a backstage segment between Alpha Academy and whatever they're calling Gulak's group now. I don't think they have an official name yet, but Gulak versus Otis in a match later down the line. Lyra Valkyria comes out and addresses her title victory. I'm gonna just go ahead and say it. Like, I wasn't a big fan of her when she debuted last year. I didn't like the look. I didn't think she. I thought, to me, she felt. I don't know. I just didn't have that feel of, oh, she's gonna be a big star. I have that feel now, and that's the magic of Becky Lynch. That's the magic of what Becky Lynch can do for a superstar. Lyra she looks the part. She feels important now. And as we head into Deadline, it appears she's going to take on probably Xia Li, which this was fun. Because if you watched Monday Night Raw, this was part of it that happened during the women's little battle royal they had on Monday Night Raw. Xia Li came out and attacked Becky Lynch. And in one of the Discords I'm in, I don't remember which one, someone asked, like, what was the purpose of this whole Xia Li thing? And what I love that WWE is doing right now is the continuity between the three brands. And this just goes back to my point that they view NXT on the same level as Raw and SmackDown, or else they wouldn't be doing continuity with NXT. They just wouldn't be doing it. Right? If NXT was not important enough for them to view, if they viewed it as developmental, Becky Lynch would have come down to NXT and they wouldn't have ever mentioned it on Raw and SmackDown, and stories wouldn't go back and forth. They just wouldn't do that. Right? But Xia Li only came to NXT because she wants the NXT Women's Championship, which Becky had, which is why she attacked Becky on Monday. And so she comes out on Tuesday and challenges Lyra, and we have this continuity of the stories between the brands. And this is the way it needs to be booked, because it's all one universe in 3 different shows. And when you start to give continuity errors, there becomes a problem. And so to have these stories that start on Raw and continue on NXT, that's a perfect way to book the show. I'm in favor of it. And this, again, just completely shows why, first off, WWE as a whole is primary. But secondly, that NXT is literally changing, how people view the brand. It's no longer just developmental. It is, that third brand. And WWE is doing a very good job changing how we see and perceive NXT, and it feels important. This was a very good segment. Lyra's a pretty decent promo. Look, whoever made the decision to put her in the top that she was wearing, let me applaud you, because she looked good. She looked good. Like I'm gonna be honest. Can we not just? Lyra looked good. right? When she's in like her ring gear and she's all painted up on the face, or and she's in the ring, sometimes you don't really realize, you know, hey, she's kind of attractive. And then the accent gets me every time. But anyway, we move forward. We get the introduction of these qualifying matches for Iron Survivor, and we get the idea that, you know, legends are going to pick superstars. So Mick Foley picked the 2 matches this week, and for the women's side, he picked Fallon Henley versus Tiffany Stratton. Because it didn't happen last week, he wants to see it this week with up stakes, right? Now, let me tell you something. There was no way in hell Fallon Henley was going to win this match. But Fallon Henley's going to be women's champion one of these days. She has to be. There's so much talent there. Maybe it's just I like the gimmick. I like she's one of my favorites on NXT. But this was a pretty decent match. It was competitive, and but Tiffany got the win. That was expected. She's going to Deadline for the Iron Survivor match, and you know, it was expected that was going to be the result. We then leave after that, and a referee, I forgot his name, he leaves Shawn Michaels' office and gets, you know, asked, hey, what happened in there? What was said to you? And he said that Shawn Michaels was told to exercise discretion in relation to the rules of Wagner versus Breakker. We then see also in the background, and NXT does this so well, these background segments where where like a promo is being given, and if you're not paying attention to the screen, stuff passes by in the background. WWE is doing a lot to do this. And so we see Ava Raine entering Shawn Michaels' office. That was great. Again, then we get the backstage confrontation between Otis and Gulak. We then get Wagner versus Braun Breaker. It was an interesting match. I like the story with Von Wagner and what's going on. I don't know how much longer we can play it on, though. I think it's getting a little bit stale, in my opinion. Breaker, my feeling with Breaker, when he lost the title to Carmelo earlier this year, it just feels like the transition to heel has worked, but it feels, because he's not going after championships, it just feels like he's too big of a star to not be going after a title. And so I feel like he's just in this sort of purgatory in NXT, that they want to keep him there because they want to have this, you know, a destined roster, like a solid roster for NXT, to make it feel like it's not developmental. Because the problem with the language of NXT is, oh, Braun Breaker wins the title, he gets over, he gets caught up. And there is a problem with that. There's no continuity of character there. You can't really get behind Braun Breaker 100% because eventually he's going to get caught up. And so I think they want to keep the roster of NXT, you know, solid and solidified and constant. And I think the idea of call-ups may be completely done. It could be just, hey, we signed to Raw. We lost this match. To, you know, sort of like the Creeds, right? They lost the match, having to leave NXT, and they never officially re-signed with NXT, right? And so they signed contracts with Raw. And I feel we might have things like that where trades could happen, or you know, during the draft, Raw drafts someone from NXT. But I also think eventually in the draft, NXT is going to be part of the draft. I actually believe that. Breaker beats Wagner. Then after it, Wagner puts Breaker through the commentary table. And can I just say, Vic Joseph and Booker T are the best commentary group in WWE right now, and probably in wrestling. Because as he was picking them up, if you didn't catch it, Vic Joseph had like a bowl of candy on the commentary desk. And when Von picked up Braun Breaker, Vic Joseph was like, I don't give a damn about my candy. Put him through the table. It's just like their chemistry, and Vic Joseph is great. He's top tier, and Booker T's just funny. I know people think he's annoying, but he's funny. And the commentary of NXT is just next level. We then get a match: Kalani Jordan and Roxanne Perez versus Lola Vice and Elektra Lopez. It was okay. It wasn't, the best. It was good at building Lola Vice, right? She won the breakout tournament. Now you just got to sort of build her as a legitimate threat to Lyra Valkyria, which that may actually be the deadline match. I didn't think about that. We could get Xia Li beforehand, but who knows when Lola Vice cashes in that contract. And so this was a fun match. You get Kalani over. Roxanne sort of in the same place Braun Breaker is, where it feels like she's in a purgatory because there's really nothing for her to do, and she's not going after the women's championship. And her star level, based on her sort of resume, just demands that, hey, she can't really be in the mid card all that long. Because with NXT, you have all these new stars, like Carmen Petrovic was shown again. And so you're building stories with the new people you just put in the breakout tournament. And so NXT, with the women's division, they got the women's division in all of WWE, it's stacked. Like I believe it's at the point to where you're probably, like, I think you could be justified in saying we need an all WWE show. We definitely need mid-card titles. And I even think NXT needs a mid-card women's title at this point, just to give some of these people something to fight for. And so, I mean, this was a decent match. It was exactly what you expected. Ariana Grace was out there. They're going to use her. Carmen Petrovic was out there. I'm glad they're going to use her. She was really the breakout star to me in that tournament. We then get a segment to set up Brutes versus OTM. Again, this continuity of Brutes being on Raw, being on SmackDown and then being on NXT, and it looks like the Brutes are gonna be on NXT. When was the last time we saw Sheamus? Was it the match against Edge? And so I like what they're doing with the Brutes, and this sort of story of, out the mud being the sort of gangsta, like we're in the streets. Like when we say like from the streets in America, like we think of like gangsta culture, out west, like GTA, like stuff like that. And the promo with the Brutes was, no, we were in the streets here in England, but that has a different connotation, but we still struggled. Right. And I love this story. It was a very beautiful commentary on, of culture and how things change. And it's not just a particular group who struggles. There's a lot of people of all cultures and that struggle. I thought it was a very, very good video to set up this match. Moving on, we have Otis versus Drew Gulak. Again, another decent match. It did exactly what you needed to do. Otis is a star. The fan loved Otis. Fans loved him. And they just, this really, really, really put in the fact that while we don't see like championships going to these two, Chad Gable and Otis are some of the hardest workers, and Triple H and the whole creative team has put in a shit ton of work to get Alpha Academy over, and it's working. The fans love them. It's working. And this goes down to show that you don't have to be champion to be like the top star, right? Alpha Academy's over. And I want to sit here and talk about it. They may be the best tag team in WWE right now. I want to know your take on that. They may be the best tag team in WWE right now in terms of character work, promo work, the gimmick, how over they are. They may just be the best tag team in the WWE, and I'm all for it. We then get, well, this was our main event, I believe. Iron Survivor match number 2, Tyler Bate versus Dijak. This was fun. Dijak ended up winning, which is going to be interesting to go into this Iron Survivor match where Dijak is going to be a part of it. That's going to be fun. That's going to be very fun. And then we end it with the segment between Carmelo and Trick, where Trick basically is trying to get to the point of, did you attack me? And Carmelo, he's trying to avoid the question. He's seeming sort of suspicious, saying, I've always been here. Trick, I don't remember the full promo, but Trick basically mentions that he didn't see the person who attacked him, and so when Carmelo heard that, he emphasized it a couple times. Oh, you saying you didn't see the guy who attacked you? And then as we were sort of getting to like Carmelo either answering yes or no, Lexus King comes out, and what a place to put Lexus King, right? Because these are Trick Willie and Carmelo are probably the 2 top stars right now on the brand, right? And the insert Lexus King right here. They got some plans for this man, and he comes out and he's playing this character, and he's getting under the skin of Trick Williams, which leads Trick to try to punch Lexus King, but who dodges and he hits Carmelo. This is fun. That's heel work at its best. This was dramatic. This was story. This is going to be fun. Now, whether we get Trick versus Mello at Deadline or Trick versus Lexus King at Deadline, whichever way it goes, it could be a triple threat between the 3. Whichever way it goes, it's going to be fun. And it's going to be very entertaining. I like the story. Overall, while it wasn't maybe, with Halloween Havoc being like the special event episodes, those were fun. And those were, a lot happened. You had a lot to talk about, and a lot of, culmination of stories and things like that happened, title matches. But you need TV episodes like what we had here to set up the next PLE. And so this was just a perfect episode to set up NXT Deadline. I mean, you got just over literally like 31 days. I think it's like 31, 32 days until Deadline. You have 4 weeks to build it. So it's going to be a fun event. I'm going to stick behind it no matter how good Survivor Series is, right? No matter how good it is. Survivor Series will be better than Crown Jewel, but Deadline will be the best of the 3 shows to end the year. In November, December. Right? If we were to rank those 3 events on December 10th, right? We go to sleep after Deadline. We wake up Sunday, December 10th. You're going to sit here and you're going to agree with me that Deadline was the best, by far the best of those last 3 events of the year for WWE. And if you're going to sit here and say otherwise, I mean, it hasn't happened yet, so I'm not going to 100% guarantee it. But I'm fairly certain that that's what's going to happen. And there's going to be like excuses of, oh, well, it's the circumstance, or it's because they're able to do some more things because of the what it is it's just excuses. Let's just admit that NXT is the top show and move on with it. But what I see is from hardcores and casuals alike is they don't want to put NXT above anything else because it I think personally people look too close to the ratings. Oh, well, it's 3rd in ratings in WWE. Who cares? It's not about the quantity of people who watch. but the quality of the show that it's the quality of the show that I'm talking about. The quality of the show is the best. And if we focused on the quality of the entertainment in the show, I think more people would end up watching NXT, which I think eventually NXT could get above Raw in the ratings. Personally, I think that could happen. But this was a very solid episode. Very solid episode of NXT. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Let's talk about these last two news stories, and then we'll get out of y'all's way so y'all can enjoy the rest of your day. So let's talk about the first one, which is at first it was a rumor, and then it became almost confirmed. You know, the news sources were, the journalist. I say that very lightly. Wrestling journalism are just a bunch of fans who created websites. The journalist sort of confirmed it, and then the network itself confirmed it. NXT is moving to the CW starting October 2024. This is where the TV deal will take them. It was reported when SmackDown was reported to go to USA that Raw and NXT were not going to be picked up. Now, from what I've read, the plan is to keep NXT on Tuesdays, but that could change. It's going to be up to the network. I don't see how the network changes it. Tuesdays fit well for it. You want to keep it the same. Let's not act like CW has a lot to put on TV. Right? But let me explain to you why this is a good deal. Right? So many people are like, oh, why are they moving to CW? Let me explain to you how, first off, I kind of figured this would happen one of these days where a wrestling show would end up on the CW. But two, why this is a good deal. So let's talk about it. So over the last 6 or 7 months, well, let's first go back about a year. I think a year or two ago, CW got bought out by, is it Nexstar Media? And they own about 75% of the company. The remaining 25% is split between, I believe it's Paramount and Warner Brothers. So what's quite honestly funny about this is technically Warner Brothers is paying the competition of their other show. At least, I think they own like 12.5% of it. But CW over the last like 6 to 8 months has really been trying to build a sports brand, a sports division of their network. They've acquired rights to ACC football. Some of them, not all of the games, but some games will be on ACC football. They've acquired the rights to the NASCAR Xfinity series. Now, if you're not a NASCAR fan, so the Xfinity series, when you think of NASCAR, there's 3 brands or 3 divisions in mainstream NASCAR. Because once you get past these 3 divisions, NASCAR owns a bunch of lower tier like developmental series as well. But the top tier pro series for NASCAR, you have the Truck Series. That's sort of where either old retiring drivers who don't really have a lot of talent go and race, or where the younger guys start out. You have the Truck Series, you have the Xfinity Series, which is, those are your up and comers. These are the people who maybe need 1 or 2 years of final pieces of their development before they hit the Cup Series. And so these are like the future of NASCAR and the Xfinity Series. And so the Xfinity Series, they do 35 races. Next season, I believe it's them. Let me I could be wrong. Them or yeah. It is the Xfinity. Okay, sorry, it's not 2024. Starting in 2025, Xfinity Series will be on the CW. Right, and so that really started, those 2 deals really started this. and it really made me think, well, CW's trying to be a sports empire here. They're trying to build and they're not trying to get the best brands involved, right? They're not going to do the Cup series, but here's why that was a good deal. If you're not a NASCAR fan, you probably won't care about this, but the Xfinity series always got moved around. Like the race could be like just over and they were getting ready to do post-race interviews, but because those were always on either Fox or NBC, and events, if they went over time, they would just pull the race off because any sporting event around it, whether it's football, basketball, or whatever, probably would have more viewers who would want to watch football or basketball than racing, right? With CW, they're not going to pull the race because that's what that's their big money program, right? On a Saturday afternoon, that's going to be their big money program, right? And so, now acquiring the ACC, that's going to be interesting on how that works with the schedule. I'm assuming the CW games will either be like a Saturday night or like the 12 o'clock, and probably more Saturday night games, or like, ACC does Friday night games, and I think the Friday night games are going to be on the CW as well. So it's going to be interesting. They're building a sports empire, and for WWE to get on top of that, that's big. That's big. But let's also take a look at why this is a good deal for WWE. They're getting 70% increase in TV rights than what NXT was making. Now, let's understand, I don't know the number, but 5 years ago, when NXT was on the WWE network, they weren't making money for it. I don't know the exact percentage, but it's well over 100% increase from 5 years ago in terms of money built, right? So they've built this brand to where from the last TV deal to the new TV deal, they raised the value 70%. That's big. And this almost guarantees that NWA does not make an appearance on the CW network, which has to irritate Billy Corgan. And so that's big. That's big, right? So the last news story I want to talk about, though, is apparently over the last 24 hours, WWE has edited CM Punk's alumni page. And this has casual fans, CM Punk fans, hardcore fans, all in a scurry, trying to figure out what this means. And then you have me. This is my response to it. Could this be them sort of telling us CM Punk showing up? Maybe. But here's what I think it is. Because I did what I did what I always do, and I do research before I try to talk about these things. I went to, I think it's called the Wayback Machine or Internet Archive. It goes by both names. And you can put in a website and you can look at the saved versions of that website over time. And I think CM Punk's website for his profile, the furthest back you could go was like 2012. But I went back to January of 2023. And the first, I think it was like January 5th, 2023 was the first screenshot of the year that was uploaded of the page. And I looked at it, and none of the information is different from this new saved edition from November like 6th or 7th, whenever it happened, right? Nothing changed. So what could have happened? They could have just gone in there, or nothing noticeable changed to me. I didn't see any wording differences, so they could have just gone on there and put a different picture. The picture is the same, but they could have put a different picture file where they saved the picture again. It was just a different file name. They could have done something like that. They could have maybe added a period somewhere that I didn't catch, or take a period away. And what I think it is ultimately just stirring the pot. They want to get people talking about this. I'm not 100% guaranteeing CM Punk showing up, because of this. There are going to be people that say all of these teases, WWE's for sure bringing CM Punk in, and he may as well show up. And I'll say I was wrong, but I just don't think this is enough proof to say, oh, CM Punk's going to be there. I think this easily could have just been WWE stirring the pot to get the conversation started. I think that's what this could have easily just have been. Because we really have to ask ourselves, and we've already been over this, but what's the value that CM Punk brings? What's the value that CM Punk brings to WWE? They don't need more ticket sales. They're already selling out arenas. The TV deals they're making massive amounts of money on, and CM Punk's not there yet. Like, what else does the benefit of CM Punk give you other than, a 3 to 4 month reign to lead to WrestleMania, a run to lead to WrestleMania, and then what? I don't think there's a benefit there, right? Because you look at if you look at the shows leading into WrestleMania that CM Punk could be on, outside of just selling out Raws and SmackDowns, which are probably already going to sell out anyway because the product's just hot. They're moving tickets, man. They're moving tickets. You don't need CM Punk. They're already moving. But you have Royal Rumble, which will sell out because it's Royal Rumble. You have Elimination Chamber in Australia. That's going to sell out when tickets go on sale because it's a foreign Australian show. You don't need CM Punk there. And then you have WrestleMania, which is going to sell out because it's WrestleMania. So what are you needing CM Punk to sell tickets for? Because Raws and SmackDowns are already selling out. Right? It's not like, will his merch move? Sure. But it's not like they need help moving any other merch or making money from anything else. LA Knight's got that locked down. Roman Reigns has got that locked down. I just don't see the benefit of bringing in CM Punk. I just don't. I can admit I'll be wrong. And when he shows up, I'm not going to be overly emotional. I'm not going to cry that he shows up. I'm probably going to be very meh about him showing up. Because I just don't think he's needed. I just don't. And so I don't see a benefit. I just don't see a benefit in having CM Punk be here. And so I think this ultimately could have just been WWE stirring the pot just a little bit to get this conversation started, to get the expectation going. And then like, well, if they're doing this and they let us down, they're going to hijack. Chicago's not going to hijack the show. Chicago had the opportunity to hijack AEW the day CM Punk was fired, and they did not do it. They did not do it. It's going to be the same audience. Let's not act like it's going to be a completely different audience than the audience that was in Chicago the day CM Punk was fired and they didn't hijack the show. If they wanted to hijack the show, they would have done it then. But they didn't. They're not going to hijack the show. They're just not. Unless you give them an ultimate snoozer, but that's not going to happen. CM Punk doesn't have to be there. He just doesn't. And I'm going to rest on that. I'm going to 100% build my viewpoint on that CM Punk is not needed in WWE. It could have even just been them adding videos to his profile because we're approaching 10 years from when people just jump in. Oh, they're editing things. Maybe they added more videos. It's been 10 years since we've seen him in a WWE, or will be 10 years at Royal Rumble. It's been 10 years. Maybe they added a 10-year anniversary of his last match in Royal Rumble. Who knows what they did? But everyone's acting like, oh, they're dusting off the old book here. They got to get it ready for when he shows up. Now, what do they got to get ready? The profile hasn't changed in 10 years. And I think it's just ultimate overreaction. I think it's ultimate overreaction to just some pot stirring. That's just how I feel about it. So let me know what y'all think. I know this was a little bit more than the traditional NXT review, but there was some news that we had to talk about. Let me know what y'all think about this and everything we discussed. If you watched NXT, let me know what y'all thought about the episode. And with that being said, I will see y'all next week. Have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week. And again, like, share, subscribe. Slapping Meat Wrestling Podcast merchandise at slappingmeatwrestling.com. Like, share, subscribe. Join the Discord. Links also in the description. And enjoy the rest of your day and week. And I'll see you on Monday.
Brother, I'm going run a wild Hulk Hogan. If I like get a moment, I'll make sure it's an explosion. 'Cause lately I've been